Did you know the IELTS listening section has 4 different parts? If you'd like to know more about the different sections in the IELTS listening, then please continue watching this video as I cover many important factors of the IELTS listening exam. Just a little bit about myself. My name is Miss Waffa and I am a certified English teacher in Canada. I have been coaching students for the IELTS exam for the past 6 years, so I want to make these videos to hopefully help you in your IELTS journey. In this video, I will cover the difference between the IELTS General versus the academic listening, as well as a detailed explanation for IELTS listening. Then we will discuss the IELTS question types that you will get in the listening parts, as well as the most popular questions that students ask me for the IELTS listening section. Finally, I will cover the top IELTS listening strategies that I provide to my students. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel down below as I put out content every Friday to help you with your IELTS examination. Also, please check out my website at eslwords.com, where I give you lots of strategies on how you can score a high band in your IELTS exam. So let's discuss the difference between the IELTS listening for the general and the academic. There's actually no difference at all. So the IELTS listening section is the same for both of these exams. So you should definitely continue watching since this video will be beneficial to either test you are taking. So let's look into the different parts that you would get in the IELTS listening. So you will be getting 4 different parts. In each part, you are required to listen for different things. So let's go through this. In part 1, you will hear a discussion between 2 people talking about something to do with everyday life. Some examples of this can include hearing a conversation about someone reserving a hotel room or reserving a booking a travel ticket, something along these lines. And in part 2, you will hear 2 to 3 people discussing an everyday matter that can range from a radio show. And in part 3, you will hear a discussion with up to 4 people, usually 3 to 4 people, where they will be discussing an issue within an educational or training setting. So it could be in a corporate, meeting boardroom or in an educational setting. I highly recommend that you be ready to notice the difference with the voices, because obviously if 3 to 4 people are talking, this can sound confusing. So just try to stay focused. And lastly, in part 4, you'll hear probably 4 people talking about an issue within a university environment. This will most likely include a university lecture. So it will be, the information will be based on academics. These are some of the top frequently asked questions my students ask me. First one are IELTS listening questions in order. Yes, they do go in order. IELTS listening questions do go in order. So you will hear the answer to question 1 first before hearing the answer to question 2. So just remember that it does go in order. And number 2, how is the IELTS listening section conducted? So the IELTS listening section lasts for about 30 minutes. You will be required to answer 40 questions, and each part has 10 minutes. So as I mentioned, there's 4 parts, and in each part, you will be required to answer 10 questions. One thing I want you to remember is the information in each part, the listening section, the information gets a bit more difficult from part 1 to part 2, and then more difficult in part 3, and then more advanced in part 4. So the second last question is, can we see the questions while listening in IELTS? So yes, you will be able to see the questions while you are listening for the answers. The examiner will actually give you a minute to look over the questions before the audio is played. So you have a minute to look at the questions before, and as well you have time to look at it while you're writing the examination. Lastly, the IELTS listening score, how it's calculated is, as I mentioned, you will be given 40 different questions, so 10 questions per section. And for every answer you get right, you get 1 mark. So it's 1 mark per question. So next, we will talk about the top IELTS listening tips and tricks that I provide for my students. I think these are very, very important for you to implement these strategies into your studying time, just because I know that some of these could be quite difficult and challenging for students when they are listening for the answers. So, tip 1 is familiarize yourself with the different English accents. The reason why I recommend this is because every audio recording you hear will actually either be in a British accent, North American, Australian, within these type of English accents. And I know that each one could sound so different. So I highly recommend you to start listening to some audio, maybe a YouTube videos of these different types of accents, just so you could compare some words. If you don't understand a word for example, in the British accent, you could look it up. So it's definitely important to look into these before your IELTS exam. Tip 2 would be to understand the different question types. This is really important to keep in mind because the thing is, you want to make sure you are familiar with the different question types you will be asked. Just so you know what to expect, I recommend you to take some IELTS practice tests online, or just so you become familiar with the different question types you may see in the IELTS exam. Tip 3, read the question carefully. I know this sounds a bit easy, but I always mention to my students, it's so important to keep this in mind and read it carefully, because you want to make sure that you understand the instructions that the examiner is looking for, as well as the instructions will give you a complete detail about what order your listening exercise will go into. So make sure you are listening very attentively as the IELTS listening instructions are being given to you. Tip 4, listen for plural language. Listening for plural language is key. If you don't pay attention to plural words, it can lead to the wrong answer. So you want to make sure that you listen for plural language, because when you are transferring your answers to the answer sheet, you want to ensure that you are writing the right word, whether it's plural or singular. Tip 5 is you need to pay attention the entire time. Listen carefully for the right answer. If you are looking for tips for the IELTS speaking section, then please check out my video link down below for lots of IELTS strategies that I give for the speaking section.